Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you for having me. For those that don't know me, my name's David Ritter, and I lead sustainability at Grimshaw Architects. And yeah, thanks for having me. And also thanks to the other authors behind this report. I have to say a big thanks to Anne Austin, leaving her trail of magic through this subgroup and really mapping out the bones of this document, which was used as a sort of consultation document originally. And the remaining members of the team, Jennifer Slocum, particularly Pip Harley and myself, have pulled this together as something that can be a resource that could go onto the MECLA website. And of course, Monica as well played a regular role inputting into our group and feeding ideas and shaping this. So what is it? It's the pledge is an idea that was really one of the initial ideas that came out of the long list of actions for MECLA, and it was really about addressing the demand signal, and that there's the potential for governments to ask for head contractors to pledge to embodied carbon reductions as a prerequisite for bidding for projects, for tendering for projects. So this is really where this idea came about, and initially we were working as a subgroup, I suppose, carrying out a lot of consultation with governments and government procurement departments, really circulating the idea. And it's great that there are government organisations who are taking this on. So we're already starting to see in South Australia that there's been policy going out requiring head contractors to commit to embodied carbon reductions, and obviously New South Wales have got very favourable policies around their agencies also implementing similar through policy that's going forward at the moment. So it's great that there's real momentum, and I think as far as the group was concerned, we felt we could try and encapsulate this as an info pack, and it could be a resource, and it could form part of a wider set of tools that MECLA can offer. So it really tries to address this chicken and egg problem, ensuring a consistent ask. So where only a few clients, if you look at the upper right sort of orange box there, only a few clients are setting embodied carbon ambitions for construction projects, and therefore the request to suppliers for embodied carbon products is infrequent. Suppliers don't have enough consistent ask to make the change, and there are less options on the market, and then clients are hesitant to ask. So it's just a negative feedback loop, right? We've all identified that. So what the pledge does is seeks to try and break that negative feedback loop with a positive ask for required embodied carbon reduction targets as a tender prerequisite every time consistently. So you get this more consistent ask across the market, and you start to get a demand for low embodied carbon products to really accelerate the transformation across the market. And so what is the policy approach? We've put in here some wording around what that pledge commitment could look like in policy. It's really requiring head contractors to have a publicly available organizational target commitment to reducing embodied carbon in construction materials as a prerequisite to be able to tender. So there's a bit of detail in here. When we talk about head contractors, it's not necessarily a requirement for all of their suppliers, although the head contractor may wish to pass that on. Being publicly available should be on a website or other accessible link. It's a kind of whole of organization target, and that's deliberate, not just a sort of project, because it ensures that consistency of demand. And really, it's a kind of low entry, like, you know, science-based targets are preferred, but at the moment, any form of smart target that the head contractor prefers is encouraged, let's say. And it's about specifically embodied carbon. It's for reducing carbon, not embodied carbon, not offsetting it. And in the early stages, we're saying it should be just a very simple kind of pass-fail requirement, do they have a commitment or not? It's not evaluating the quality of that pledge, but in time, the quality of that commitment could become something that's part of the evaluation criteria that's suggested here. So as we said, it's not going to be thinking about the quality of that pledge, but there's some bullet points in here about what head contractors should consider to make an effective pledge, having specific, measurable, achievable, time-based objectives, the scope being focused on scope 3 emissions, A1 to A5, having a supporting action plan of how to progress, measure, and report against the target or commitment is important. How to leverage, or the thinking behind how to leverage the supplier collaboration and third-party verifications recommended. The commitment could have a maturity of development, so there's different scales of maturity. The first scale is kind of like the elementary or elemental, because it's probably something that's more focused on thinking about the components of a development or a project in an elemental way. So it could be about concrete, for example, so committing to using cement replacement, for example, here. Scaling up is where you start to think about it as being an all of organization target. So, it could be a scope 3 target across the whole of the organization, and an advanced target might be where there's a whole of organization commitment, and there's a real commitment also to a sort of evidence-based or science-based measurement and targeting. So that would be where we see the maturity of the pledge evolving. And to help, we've provided some links to, if you like, some case studies or examples of, in this case, the ask, so the emerging policy. So the two case studies I mentioned earlier, the Government of South Australia, Department for Infrastructure and Transport, which is the department that Jennifer Slocum has been working in. So she's obviously had some good impact and inroads into making this happen there. And then the New South Wales government have also introduced their procurement policy recently. And although it's not explicitly a sort of pledge prerequisite policy, it's certainly something that is saying to its agencies that implementing such a policy is what they're seeking and is encouraged. So it fits in very well. And of course there is mandatory embodied carbon reporting that will be coming in 2 or 3 years time, but that's not targeting. This is all about setting targets and setting ambition around embodied carbon. So here's some examples of some elemental commitments. So Built and Lang O'Rourke have got some examples here that we've referenced. Some examples of scaling up, and this is really just a quick scan through what's out there on the internet, and these could evolve and be updated, but this is the current state of play that's out there. And then some advanced pledges has got some examples from Lend-Lease and Acciona here as well. So it's really intended to encourage and give guidance and some reassurance that these things are happening, and there's examples of others out there doing this. We've put in here some considerations for policymakers, so they would want to consider pointing head contractors towards guidance, and there's certainly a role here for MECLA to play in supporting and preparing such guidance, and that this is partly doing that, and there may be other opportunities. We recommend broader consultation. So whilst MECLA's done internal consultation on this policy proposal, any government agency intending to introduce this, it would obviously be recommended that they do their own industry engagement prior to introducing the policy, and also consider a lead time. It would at least need to be a year's 12 months of lead time to give organizations enough warning to learn about embodied carbon and develop an appropriate target. And that's pretty condensed. We had 24 months in there previously, but I think things are moving so fast that 12 seems reasonable. But certainly having some lead time in is a good measure. And then behind this, there's a whole raft of frequently asked questions, which Anne would be very familiar with, because this was all good material that Anne had contributed initially. So we've really just edited and updated this and tried to make it so that it's appropriate to be put onto the website. It's a bit of a halfy. It can work as a presentation, as I'm doing. It can also read as a report and stand alone. So it does lots of things. I think that's the last piece of it. So any questions?